You all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Cyprian, I ask that you call the roll.
Dunn.
Here.
Leader. Blumsky.
Here.
Graham, absent. Toludo.
Here.
York.
Here.
Levin.
Here.
Park.
Here.
Conquest.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Mulliner.
Here.
Brennan.
Here.
Sabatino.
Here.
Deuter.
Here.
13 present, 1 absent.
13 present, 1 absent. We have a quorum. We are in session. On to agenda item 3, written communications from the public. At this time, is there anybody who has any written communications they wish to submit? If so, please raise your hand if you have any written communications. Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item 3. No, agenda item 4, public forum. This is an opportunity for anybody in the audience to address the council on any item they so choose. We ask that you direct your comments to the council, specifically to the chair. Once your name is read, we ask that you make your way over to the microphone to my right, your left, out of respect for work that we have to get done here this evening and out of respect for others that may want to speak. We ask that you keep your comment to 3 minutes. If you go over 3 minutes, I will give you a gentle reminder and ask you to wrap up your comments. Clerk Cyprian, at this time, is there anybody who has signed up for public forum?
No one signed in, Mayor Morley.
No one signed in. Anybody at this time who did not sign in but wishes to address the council, please raise your hand. Seeing none, that concludes public forum for this evening. Agenda item 5, any announcements from the dais? Alderman Brennan, Conquest.
Go ahead, I yield the
Okay.
floor. The Elmhurst York Field Food Pantry, which is a wonderful charity down in the 6th Ward, is holding a fundraiser at Panera Bread across the street at North Avenue here on Saturday, April 13th from 4 to 8. You just need this form or something like it, and the money will, some proceeds will then be donated to the Elmhurst York Field Food Pantry. Thank you.
Fantastic. Alderman Dunn?
Yes, I just want to make a quick announcement. Alderman Leader and I will be having a ward meeting on Wednesday, April 17th at 7 o'clock. That will be at the Fire Station number 1 on North York Road. All Ward 2 residents are invited, as well as anyone else that has any interest. Will be covered, it's an information session for the residents to bring them up to speed on some of the bigger issues in town, such as stormwater development, O'Hare noise, and other topics. Thanks.
Okay. Alderman York.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Elmhurst Children's Assistance Foundation is having their 25th anniversary gala on Saturday, April 13th. It's going to be at River Forest Country Club. It's a celebration of 25 years of doing all the wonderful work that they do in supporting families that have children that have unfortunate circumstances. So I would encourage everybody to attend. You can look at information and order tickets at www.ecaf4kids.org. Again, Saturday, April 13th, 7 p.m.
Clerk Cyprian, you had an announcement?
I do. Just a reminder that tomorrow is Election Day. Polls open at 6 a.m. and close at 7 p.m. You would have to check DuPage Election Commission if you're not sure where your polling place is.
Okay. Any other announcements? Seeing none, we'll go on to agenda item 6, consent agenda. At this time, is there any item on the consent agenda any alderman wishes to pull, to provide further comment, or vote no? Alderman Levin.
610.
610. 610. Okay. Anyone else? I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda minus item 6.10. Motion by Alderman Mulliner, second by Alderman York. Cyprian.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader,
Aye.
Palomski,
Aye.
Graham, absent, Toledo,
Aye.
York,
Aye.
Levin,
Aye.
Park,
Aye.
Conquest,
Aye.
Kennedy,
Aye.
Mulliner,
Aye.
Brennan,
Aye.
Sabatino,
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays, consent agenda is approved, minus item 6.10. On to agenda item 6.10, this is the zoning ordinance. I'd ask Clerk Cyprian to read the ordinance.
An ordinance approving a text amendment to the City of Elmhurst zoning ordinance to provide for planned unit developments.
Put this before council, ask for a motion to approve the ordinance as read. Motion by Alderman Honquist, second by Alderman Toledo. Alderman Honquist?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will defer this to Alderman,
Levin.
you. Who pulled the report? I'm not stopping at Panera just for that.
Alderman Levin, you are the one who requested this be pulled. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I wanted to spend a little time, some comments and spend a little time discussing this with the council. For those who have not participated on DPZ in the last couple of years, we have had a number of times where something came up, and I remember asking our former director about our PD ordinance, and the answer was, well, we kind of have one, but it's not really framed as a PD ordinance. And we identified a need to have one, and that is, and I'm in favor of a PD ordinance generally. That's how it came to be that we are looking at one tonight. I think a PD is a good tool for a city to have. The issue is what kind of ordinance, the requirements and the restrictiveness. Many municipalities offer a PD as something that's a tool offered to a developer to come in town and say, I would like to do something, but it's going to require multiple variances and conditional or special uses. And so the PD allows you to put together a plan for the whole area and not get tied into all those entanglements of the various other types of zoning relief. There are some where you have a choice, and there are some where you are required to go through the PD process. Chicago has certain areas. It was called to my attention that River Forest is a town where anything over 20,000 square feet is required. The proposed PD ordinance is for any development that has more than 75 feet of frontage in our downtown area. And it's not just downtown, and don't think just York or Addison, it's the entire downtown area, meaning the outer core, the civic area over by the library, I don't know what they're all called, the neighborhood transition areas are all what would be within this district. And as a result, almost every current development we are seeing in place right now would have to have gone through a PD. That would include certainly Opus, the one that's, I think, called the Hill or whatever over there where the Marathon Station was, the one that Mazzocchi is doing up here, Tony Gambino's project down next to the walkway. So I want to shift over and remind the council that starting about 4 years ago, we had a number of developers coming in to ask for relief that was repeated. I want to build a 6-story building. I don't want to have to keep coming in for a conditional use, or we recognize it as a continued request. And there was, for whether you agree with it or not, the council at that time said, we shouldn't require people to come in for relief to do this 6-story development. And so I think it was in 2017, I might be off a year, we changed our zoning and said if you're building 6 stories, you can do that as a matter of right in our downtown area. And that was a recognition of the character of our downtown, to eliminate the cost of zoning relief, the delays, and I say the cost to both the city, staff time, our time, the developer's cost as well. And if you wanted to go from 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or I should say 7, 8, 9, 10, you would still require a conditional use.
the effect of this proposed PD in reality is that it's really going to a time more restrictive than where we were before we did the 2017 changes, because now you can't go to 6 stories as a matter of right in practicality, because no development is going to be less than 75 frontage feet. And so you'll have to go into a PD process, and in my opinion, it's much cleaner and easier for someone to come in. It's a much easier process to meet the conditional use standards, come in, put your application through, and you're on your way. A PD process has a lot more steps. You have to meet, under our proposed PD, you have to meet all those 7 conditional use requirements, and then there are about 9 more you have to meet. They're laid out in the ordinance. So I look at it and I think, well, if a developer comes in now and they want to do a 6-story building as a matter of right, we're going to stop them and say you have to come in. And I've talked to various aldermen and I say, well, what are we trying to do? What are we trying to regulate? And almost, with almost no exception, it's, well, we want to have a seat at the table so we know what it's going to look like, so we can help regulate what it's going to look like, which I'll use the word taste for a short word for it. We want to have an input on the aesthetic taste of the building. And, you know, because we have other tools, sometimes if, you know, people are coming in for TIF money, we can say, you know, we want a seat at the table there, but this is someone that just wants to come in and build. Susan Rose famously said years ago, I have no problem regulating taste as long as it's mine. And I think that regulating appearance or taste gets into a quagmire. And the reason is, if we really feel like something shouldn't happen in our downtown area, then there should be one ordinance, there should be one fight about what you can build. And then you're done if you're really going to regulate appearance. If you do the PD process and everyone could build as a matter of right, but we're going to have them come in and present their project so that we can say, well, we don't like the appearance, my question is, who's going to make that decision? Is it going to be the 9 people, whatever it is, on the Planning and Zoning Commission? Is it going to be the initial review of DPZ? Is it going to be city staff? Is it going to be the 14 aldermen or the mayor? So it opens up a whole debate, really, and I would defer to city attorney on this. I don't think ultimately you can be turned down if a project came in and we told them we wanted a different appearance, but everything else was in order. I don't think that would be a good basis. So I use this example as an example, Opus. They came in, and let's assume for discussion purposes that they requested no TIF relief. They just came in and said, we want to build it. And at the time, there were some aldermen that said, I don't really like the appearance, the finishes. Some aldermen said, I really do like it. So if they came in and they wanted to build that project as a matter of right at 6 stories, and they met every other requirement right down the line, we would still require them to go through a PD. And it's a much more, in my opinion, expensive, lengthy process to build what they could build today as a matter of right. I think that the struggle I'm having with the proposed ordinance is that there may be situations where it's appropriate. You know, there have been requests that come in for people. We have one right now where someone wants to build 10 stories, and it's a conditional use, and maybe we'd have a hard time saying no on a conditional use. Maybe over 6 stories is a good use for a PD. Maybe if it's 200 feet or some very significant development in our downtown area, I could say, well, maybe that's a required PD. My goal is to make sure that, and I guess I owe an apology. I did talk to the chairman today. He said, why didn't you bring this up last time? And perhaps I should have, but I was struggling with it a bit. A lot of times things go through committee and we rely on our fellow aldermen to look at what's going through, and But this is a very significant, important piece of legislation, and it needs to be looked at carefully. I have commented on other developments as they've gone through our city council and say, well, gee, who was on the city council when that was passed? And that will be us. I've heard comments from some aldermen, well, we could let this go and see how it works out, and we can always change it, but it takes a couple of years to make a change, to get through the whole, through DPZ, to send it to, and when I say something, 2 years, it's something of this magnitude, and then to go through the commission and back to the council, et cetera. So I thought maybe I could come up with an amendment tonight. I don't have it yet, but I just am looking for, I guess ultimately, I will be making a motion to defer to a date certain. I don't want to cut anyone off from the discussion tonight, but I think there are problems with this ordinance, not that we shouldn't have a PD ordinance, not that there's not been a lot of good work going into it, but I think the aldermen need to be aware of what this is proposing and how it's going to change and undo the build as a matter of right that we so proudly put into place 2 years ago.
Additional comments? Alderman Honquist.
So as we discussed at our last meeting, and as Alderman Levin just mentioned, we were asked to update our PUD process with the city plan. So we've been through this process, and I'll just make a couple of quick comments. Number one, there are some people that think, as Alderman Levin does, that we went too far. There are others that think we didn't go far enough. Usually, to me, that's a good litmus test. There's some people that think we should have been a little bit more restrictive, and some that think we should be more lenient. In either case, I just want to make the point that this is about a process. It's not about structurally different steps to that, in which, this commission's still going to review it. They're still going to use the same criteria they're doing today, as will this committee, as will the city council. So what we're talking about is changing the PUD process and how we're engaged with the developers. I would argue, and I've got two examples, where this would help expedite the process. At first reading, as I tried to mention last time, when you first read through this, zoning is complex. And when you first read through it, you're like, well, why do you want to do this? I think I even called the mayor the first time I read it and said, are we becoming communist Russia? Now everybody's got to come through and stamp every piece of this? And at first reading, if you don't understand what we're trying to do, I could see how you would get that impression. But as I mentioned last time, I think Alderman Toludo did a great job of writing the report to try and address a lot of different concerns on what we were trying to do here. And along with help from staff, and again, our consultant that we hired to do this. And so ultimately, if a project, and I'm going to use two examples, one is the Gambino project, and the other is the Lennar project that's out there now. In both cases, one that may be asking for funds and one that wasn't asking for funds, the feedback is it would be good to have a process where we could come in up front and get a sense from the city of what will work and what would not work. And today, they do that by going to staff, then they might go to individual aldermen. The process is not as clearly defined. Then they'll eventually get to the commission. Then they adjust after the commission meeting for the aldermen. It's kludgy. In this case, we're getting feedback, including public hearings and everything closer to the front of the process, where an applicant could literally go through and by the time they get to the commission be at a almost permanent place and just looking for tweaks. So as they're doing a little bit more work up front to get through the back end faster. Today, that back end can be much more kludgy with a lot more changes. So at a high level, that's what I'm trying to communicate to everyone. You're still going to have to look at our code. We're still going to have to review these things. Somebody that comes in and do a development that does not want TIF is still going to be interested in what the city has to say. All the developer I've talked to, no one's going to come in here and spend millions of dollars to do a project and hope the city's going to bless it. It just doesn't happen. So I don't see anyone coming into town going, well, I can build that by right, so I'm just going to build it. Let's see how it goes. It's too much time, too much money involved in that. So having some relationship with the city, working through that, getting some feedback is a good thing. I do not see this as the taste police at all. I would not be in support of anything like that. I have the same concerns Alderman Levin has. That all of a sudden, there's going to be a committee out there saying, I don't like the color of the brick, or should it be brick, or should it be glass, or should it be whatever. That's up to the developer and what will work. So those are in general my comments. I'll let it rest. I'm in support of what we've put together and worked on and have in front of everybody tonight, and I would ask for your support.
Alderman Palomsky.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks to the committee for all of your work on this. I know when I sat on DP&Z with Alderman Levin, when this section of the code would come up, and we wondered why these requests or any agenda items related to a plan development, it was just, well, it just seems too much effort, too many steps, too many hoops. So I appreciate that we have looked at it. I think the example of using Opus is not really descriptive, because I was one that voted against Opus, and the reason was it was TIF funding, and it didn't meet our downtown plan, which I think is actually different from taste. So it's not, do you like modern, do you like traditional, but it was more our, looking at our downtown plan, which we since have updated, there was a section on quality building materials, and it didn't meet that. So it wasn't necessarily taste, but it was reflective of what did our residents weigh in on for our planning. And whenever we have a big change like this, I would agree that there are people going to be thinking it should be more restrictive. The other ones think it should be not as restrictive. So I think you do hit that sweet spot. But my big takeaway is that this really is not about taste, but it's about these, we're taking a look at these particular pieces, and they all are dependent, or they're all in support of the time and money that we've already spent on updating our plans. As Alderman Honquist talked about, is it worth the time and money? Well, think about all the time and money that we've invested in staff time gathering information from our residents. So we're looking at conditional use, conformity with city plans, the public welfare and utility, impact on public facilities, the cultural impact, parking and traffic, adequate buffering, performance, meaning will it be completed as scheduled and to meet the plans that were proposed, and appearance, but appearance related to our planning. So including but not limited to comprehensive plan and other relevant plans and planning policies. So I feel like this is really a culmination of what the information that we gathered in the planning process. I support it.
Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. It has been said to me by someone who has worked on development projects in multiple cities that Elmhurst is, relatively speaking, very easy to work with. What sometimes feels slow to us, when you compare that to how other cities do it, I think we actually do it very well and efficiently in terms of the time it takes to move through a project. So I think in some places, the plan development process might be very involved and lengthy and burdensome, but I expect that we'll do a plan development the same way we do as of right development or typical development, which is we work with people very well, developers very well as they move through. I think when we talk about a major development, which most of our development in downtown is, it's all, kind of leaves people with the impression it's all, I think they tend to be larger, as Alderman Levin said. But I think both developers who are working on major projects and residents expect that we have the city has some degree of oversight for those major developments. And I think the spectrum of oversight, how much oversight we have, it's a full spectrum, right? On one end, it's as of right, and the city has almost no oversight except the building permit. We make sure it doesn't fall down or doesn't burn down. That's on one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is the city is acquiring land and assembling parcels and has, direct involvement in the project. But in between those two ends of the spectrum, there are a whole bunch of tools that we have to help guide development and oversee the development. And I see this plan development as one of those tools that gives us more opportunity, but is less onerous on us to be directly involved by land acquisition and assembly. So I support what we're trying to do here. I know how much work the committee put into it and the guidance by staff and by the consultant, so I support where we're headed with this, and I appreciate the work.
Alderman Brennan?
Thank you, Mayor. So what I like about this is it is a process. And I think anytime you have a process, you can set the right expectations with those participating in the process, whether it's the developers, whether it's the residents. I think it provides a good balance between checks and balances. The transparency I greatly appreciate. I think, residents who are interested in what's going on in their community, it provides them the right insight into what's being done in the community and have the opportunity to provide that feedback. And in most cases, where I've seen that done, whether it's, in this type of format, whether it's a development of a structure in downtown or anything else that you're building, typically I find the outcome is a higher quality project that's better received because people had a say in the process. So it may feel a little onerous on the front end from my perspective. I'm not in development. I don't build things for a living. That said, it feels right for me to have these checks and balances in place so we can set those expectations and execute and hold each other accountable as it relates to the timeline. If it's onerous and it extends and frustrates the builders and everybody involved in the process, it needs to be tweaked. We need to figure out how to get the throughput and the quality that we expect from the process. So as a result, I am supportive of this.
Additional comments? Alderman Levin?
Just to be clear, there's necessarily a delay because I'm talking about not the process, as we looked at what you'd have to go through today for a conditional use, and the process where a developer would want to go look and get some input. If you're building as a matter of right, you certainly are free to go in and talk to aldermen. You can talk to city staff if you want to see what's needed or what the city's input is. But as it was described by Alderman Honquist, as you go through this whole process of the committee, the commission, the council, those are things you wouldn't have to do. So when we look at the issue of the Gambino project versus the Lennar project, they're two very different projects. The Lennar project is looking to go somewhere between 8, 9 stories, and they would have that is a good use of a PD because they'll have to go through the variance, and so before they go through all the steps, maybe they'll come in and talk about what they want to do. The Gambino project, he built as a matter of right. If he wanted to ask the city any questions, he can talk to any alderman, anyone he wants. But instead, we're saying you need to go through a legal process. You need to meet these requirements. You need to come up to hire an attorney and to put together a presentation and make to get your PD approved. So it brings us back to, well, it's not just appearance, but I'm hearing quality of building materials. I get that, but then maybe that's what our ordinance should say generally, that there's a certain kind of material. But it doesn't seem like what we're buying by making everyone go through this entire process is worth putting everyone through a PD. Again, and it's not only that process for building a matter of right, but it's also, it's not just our downtown block or two, it's the entire downtown area, so that if someone wanted to build a 75-foot building and it's, across the street, where Lakeside Bank is, they'd have to go through a PD instead of building as a matter of right. In my opinion, that adds a huge cost. So, it's a complete reversal if we're saying 6 stories you could build as a matter of right, and now saying 6 stories, you got to come in and go through a fairly sophisticated process.
Any other questions or comments? Alderman Dunn.
I support this update to our zoning ordinance. I think this injects some proactivity in the process and more clarity so that the applicant has an idea, they want to develop a certain parcel or several parcels in the downtown area, or if it's a much larger project, maybe even somewhere else in the city. But I think most of us are concentrating on the implication of downtown development. So I don't think it's a lot of the issues that the applicant would have to address. Is there an impact on wetlands or traffic flow? The wetland certainly is not going to take much time to review, and we'd want a traffic evaluation of these type of projects. So I don't think it's overly onerous on an entity coming in here wanting to do a project that will be in this city for decades to come, to present a plan, a comprehensive plan as to what they envision they will build, so that we can create a dialogue early in the process, and the end result is something that I think everyone would be pleased and can live with.
Any other comments? Alderman Leader.
Excuse me, I'm going to take this damn thing. I really don't see any problem with this, but out of deep respect for Alderman Levin, I would like to know, is he proposing to postpone this to a date certain? Or is he proposing, I'm confused, is he proposing an amendment? Or is he going to vote against this? I would really like to know. Let me put this back on, Scott.
Alderman Levin.
I would, I'm not against the whole process. I think it's a useful discussion, at least to me, to hear what the council has to say. I would move to postpone to our next meeting being April 15th, with the idea that if I had an amendment I would like the council to consider, I would present it in writing at that time.
Okay, so we have a motion to postpone, which is allowed by Robert's rules and by our ordinances. The only thing that's debatable about it is the time. You've already heard all the reasons. Do I have a second? Is there a second to postpone to date certain? Alderman Leader seconds the motion. So the motion before us, which applies to the main motion, is to postpone to the next meeting, which would be, stop texting me.
15?
April 15th, I apologize. Okay, motion to postpone, technically, motion to postpone this main motion to April 15th. We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Alderman Toledo.
Thank you. I obviously am in support of this report and ordinance.
Alderman Toledo, let me just, it's
Can you not
only.
hear me?
No, it's only debatable to the time we're pushing it to, the actual.
I was just getting there.
Okay, sorry. I had this guy in my
I
ear
was just
telling me
about
he
to
was
say
ready to
but.
jump over the dais
Just
here.
about to say but.
But,
I'm in support of this, but I'm, out of respect for my colleague who I spoke to today, I'm happy to support postponing this for 2 weeks to make more people feel comfortable with the proposal. Thank you.
Well said. Any additional comments as it relates to postpone till next meeting? Clerk Cyprian, I ask that you,
Just
Don,
point
you
of
have a
order,
question.
is a motion to postpone to a date certain and one that's seconded, is there discussion and vote on that? I thought that was,
no, you can discuss whether the time's appropriate. So I took from Alderman Toledo's comments that she's okay with the 2 weeks. That's what I took. Fair summation?
Yes.
Okay. But as to why it would be postponed is not debatable anymore. That's the point. All right, any other comments? Clerk Cyprian, we are going to take a vote on motion to postpone.
Dunn,
aye.
Leader,
Aye.
Palomski,
Aye.
Bram, absent, Toledo,
Aye.
York,
Aye.
Levin,
Aye.
Park,
Aye.
Conquest,
No.
Kennedy,
Aye.
Mulliner,
Aye.
Brennan,
Aye.
Sabatino,
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
12 ayes, 1 nay, 1 absent.
12 ayes, 1 nay, motion carries. Motion to postpone carries. We will discuss it at next meeting. I will remind council that motions to amend ordinances are allowed under our code, but I will say, as this is a very complex topic, if anybody is thinking about making any motions to amend, the chair would appreciate those in writing. All right, where am I?
7 point.
Reports and recommendations. Mayor Morley, that's me. Couple of things. Vehicle stickers on sale now, need to be stuck on your vehicle by May 1st. As an elected official, I feel I can repeat that tomorrow is Election Day. I would encourage everybody to vote. Give you a sad fact. It will be a banner turnout in the city. It'll be a banner turnout in the city of Elmhurst if 20% of the people who are eligible vote. So let's do our best to beat that number. I think it's important. As we crawl into spring with the weather, I want to remind everybody about our Water Smart program. People will be setting up their sprinklers. A lot of times, the company that comes out and sets your sprinkler also sets sprinkling in the evening, and you will not know about it. So I encourage everybody in the city of Elmhurst to go online and get educated about the Water Smart program. It allows you updates on your personal water usage, and believe me when I tell you it will save you money. Also, as we dive into spring, I will remind the residents of Elmhurst that they can always go to exploreelmhurst.com to see a calendar of events and find out what's going on around town. City Manager.
Thank you. Just one item, and that's this Wednesday. There'll be a special meeting of the Public Works Committee at 6 p.m.
Any other reports? Alderman Dunn.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick update from the last Fly Quiet meeting from March 22nd. The discussion revolved around, right now we have a proposed interim Fly Quiet that will be implemented later this year, and it's one where we're going to, during the nighttime, shift from the parallel runways to the diagonals every other week, so that would hit us every other week, which isn't such a good thing. But the discussions with the Fly Quiet have been evolving to potentially a 3-week rotation, north-south diagonal, north-south diagonal, which is much better and favorable for Elmhurst. What we discussed about last meeting was there's some encumbrance with the north runways because the maintenance facilities are up there, and when you have planes landing up in the north and other planes need to get up to the maintenance facility, it becomes difficult, and all the maintenance is done at night. And then there's engine run-ups that need to take place, which are also done up there. So the representatives from the CDA outlined some ways around that. So it was a little concerning at first that this might be a showstopper, but through certain ways of taking off and not starting all the way at the end of the runway, but maybe 10% down the runway, planes trying to get to the maintenance facility can get around. And the same way when landing, stopping a little short, don't going all the way to the runway, and then taxiing off. So that was a pretty technical discussion, and there's actually 50 planes per night, or 50 flight operations per night that go up for maintenance. So it's a lot of traffic that you have to deal with. So that was our latest discussion. Thanks.
Okay. Any other reports? Seeing none. On to agenda item 8.1, that was on there as a placeholder. It did not happen, so that we will not be voting on. On to 9.1, this is a resolution. I would ask Clerk Cyprian to read the resolution.
A resolution approving a settlement agreement and release.
To put this before council, I'll ask for a motion to approve the resolution as read. I'll have you read in a second. I need a motion to approve the resolution as read. Motion by Alderman Mulliner, second by Alderman Levin. Before we have any discussion or vote, I'm going to ask the city attorney to read information as it relates to this resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a settlement agreement derived from a litigation from 2016 car accident between one of the city's police officers and a resident of the city. The litigation matter was not an issue of liability, but instead of damages over the last couple of years. In late 2018, in front of mediation, in front of Judge Haddad, the matter settled for $460,000, well below the judge's recommendation. It should be important to note that the settlement amount is being paid, or will be paid, $190,000 from the city, which is the balance of the city's retention fund. The city has a $250,000 annual retention fund, and the balance of the $460,000, which is $270,000, is coming from the excess carrier. So this settlement agreement will settle that matter from the 2016 accident. City's contribution is $190,000, carriers is $270,000. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Any comment? Clerk Cyprian.
Dunn?
Aye.
Leader?
Aye.
Chomsky? Aye. Graham, absent. Toludo?
Aye.
York?
Aye.
Levin?
Aye.
Park?
Aye.
Conquest?
Aye.
Kennedy?
Aye.
Mulliner?
Aye.
Brennan?
Aye.
Sabatino?
Aye.
Deuter?
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays. Motion carries. Agenda item 9.1 is approved. On to other business. Any other business? I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Alderman York, second by Alderman Brennan. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.